get so many questions about different gluten-free flours and where to buy them. And what if I can't find it? What do I do? So I decided I'm going to make a little video series and show you how I make my own flour. I don't have a flour mill, but I do have a Vitamix, and it works fantastic to make all sorts of different gluten-free flours, which will not only save you money and time going to the store, but also you can blend fresh when you need them. So let's get right to it. First flour I'm going to show you how to make is sweet rice flour. And I'm going to make it 3 different ways, so stick with me to the end where you'll find out which way is the easiest and most effective way to make sweet rice flour at home. If you're wondering what on earth is sweet rice flour, you're in for a total treat, as sweet rice flour is an absolute powerhouse in gluten-free baking and is bound to become one of your pantry staples. And speaking of pantries, I'm so excited. This is my very first video that I'm filming inside my new Butlers pantry. It's not quite finished yet, and I promise you when it is, we're going to have all the videos and exactly how we transformed our pantry from this to this. Okay, so let's get back to sweet rice flour. Sweet rice flour is made from sweet rice, which is a short-grained, starchy rice that is grown mostly in Southeast and Eastern Asia. It's also known as glutinous rice or sticky rice. Here we tend to call it sweet rice in Canada. However, you can also find it at the grocery store as glutinous rice. This rice has a very low amylose content, which is a resistant starch, and a high amylopectin starch. And this is what makes it very sticky. And it is used commonly to make mochi using mochiko flour, which you may have seen in the grocery store. Remember, sweet rice flour is not the same as rice flour or white rice flour. It has totally different properties than sweet rice flour, and they are not interchangeable. Sweet rice flour used in combination with a binding agent like psyllium husk has an amazing ability to bind ingredients together and act like gluten and become a gluten replacer. And in this way, there's no need to add xanthan gum, gar gum, or any other processed binding agents to your gluten-free bakes. Sweet rice flour is one of the flours that I have labeled as a binding flour, as it has such amazing ability to bind. And so I use it as a binding flour in my gluten-free flour blends. But you don't want to use too much or it will make your gluten-free baking too chewy. We're going to take this sweet rice and we're going to grind it down with our Vitamix. If you've done research before finding this video, you'd notice there's lots of different methods to making different gluten-free flours. So I'm going to show you 3 different methods in order to make sweet rice flour, and we're going to compare those to store-bought sweet rice flour and see if it's worth the extra effort to make sweet rice flour at home. The different techniques definitely affect your final result in your baking. So get out your Vitamix. We're going to place the rice directly into our Vitamix. So we're going to start with just a small amount of rice, about a cup of sweet rice. Make sure to place your lid on. Make sure it's on variable speed 1, the lowest variable speed. And then you're just going to turn it on and slowly turn it up to the max. You grind it until you get it to the consistency that you want. Turn it back down to variable speed 1 and turn it off. Give it a minute to settle. You'll have like a whole bunch of steam you could see coming out. It gets quite hot. So just give it a moment to cool. It's a very starchy rice, so there'll be a lot of dust. Now that the dust has settled and it's had a moment to cool down, let's take a look. And there we go. Look at that. A lovely smooth powder. You can even see how it's stuck here and it feels really soft and smooth. It's as simple as that. Literally, it will take you less than 5 minutes to make your own sweet rice flour. This next way of making the sweet rice flour will allow us to actually rinse rice, which I really love because you never know what has gotten on the rice. So I'm going to put 1 cup of rice into a bowl and then 2 cups of water and give it a really good rinse. Move it around with your hands. We don't want the rice to absorb the water, but we want to clean it and make sure that we get off any of the extra starch that's sitting on it or anything that it could have been sprayed with, anything like that. If we're buying organic rice, we don't so much have to worry about that, but I still just like the idea of giving the rice a good clean. And that's why the first technique I showed you, where it was just take the rice and blend it, the thing I don't like about it is that the rice doesn't get cleaned. So once you've given it a good swish around, with this technique, I don't want the rice to absorb any of the water. So we're just going to now strain it with a fine mesh strainer to get rid of most of the water. Strain off as much of the water as we can. And then we're going to rinse it one more time. So now we just rinse the rice until the water runs clear. Then I'll just take a parchment-lined tray and lay a towel on top. Pour out my rice and just dry it out a little. Take out as much of the moisture as you can. So you can use a paper towel and just pat it dry because we're going to place this in the oven to dehydrate it. This way the rice has gotten cleaned, but it hasn't been cooked. So there's different ways to do this. And I'm just going to shake it onto the parchment lined tray. Then I'll just spread it out into an even layer. And if you have a dehydrator, you could also do it in there. You could also just lay the rice out and let it air dry or dry it in the sun like they do in a lot of parts of Asia. So we just spread it out nice and thin, and then I'm going to put it in my oven to dehydrate at 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 57 degrees Celsius. So I have a dehydrate button on my oven, but if you don't have that, just set it at as low a setting as you can until the rice becomes, right now it's still a little moist and not swollen, but a little moist. So we're just going to make it nice and dry and crispy before we're going to then grind it. After 45 minutes in the oven, our rice is ready. You can see the rice is actually quite dry again now. We're now going to grind this one. And then we'll test and see which method bakes us the best gluten-free bakes. And we'll take this to our blender base and grind it the same way we did before for about 30 seconds. The third way we're going to test out making our sweet rice flour is to once again wash our 1 cup of rice in water. And with this technique of making our sweet rice flour, we're actually going to cook the rice. It will be absorbing water. And then now I'm going to actually soak the rice for half an hour before I cook it in my Instant Pot. But you could use a rice cooker as well. So I'll see you back in 30 minutes. It's been soaking for 30 minutes now. We're going to put it through a fine mesh sieve and get all the water out. And I like to rinse it one more time until the water runs clear. Now we're ready to cook it. I'm going to just cook the rice according to the package directions. Once your rice is finished cooking, then I just transferred it to a bowl and you can see how sticky. This is where the name glutinous rice, because it is incredibly sticky. And oh my goodness, look how sticky that rice is. The rice on our baking tray, this time the cooked rice. And so it's going to be a little more difficult to spread, but we'll get it on there. Once it's on there, we're going to put it in the oven on the low heat again. If you have a dehydrate setting, I'm going to use a spatula and just spread it out. It is incredibly sticky. So I'm going to go pop this in the oven. This cooked rice is taking a very long time, so it may just have to sit out overnight. And unless it makes a huge difference to my baking, I really don't know that it's worth the extra effort. So what I'm going to do is break this up a little and then actually let them dry overnight. And I left it on the counter to dry. It was cooked, but it didn't seem like it was completely dry. So I left it overnight in order for it to become nice and crispy like this. You want it to be completely dry. So now we're going to take it and put it all into the blender. So I'm just going to pour all the pieces. So we'll turn it on low. Make sure we're on variable speed 1. And we'll turn it on low and increase to high. Now I'm ready to go do some baking and to decide which of my 3 methods is the best and how they compare to my store-bought sweet rice flour. I have all 3 of my homemade methods here in comparison to what I called method 4, which is my store-bought sweet rice flour. So method 1 here, wow, this is a really, really nice smooth flour. I'll show you up close so you can see. So this is the second method. I really can't tell any difference from the look of these two or the texture. They feel exactly the same. Method 3 is the method that we cooked, and it is a little different. It's slightly different than the other 2. It looks a little bit more yellow to me, and I could tell when I cooked the rice it looked more yellow. It's also a little more fine, the grains. Not a lot, not a huge difference, but a small bit. And then, of course, the store-bought flour feels exactly the same texture as the first 2. I would say method 3 is actually the smoothest texture and feels very similar. Method 2 feels exactly the same and looks exactly the same as the store-bought flour. So now the baking test. See what actually happens when we bake with these. I have all 4 different methods here. This is my muffin batter for method 1. You can see its consistency, and it actually tastes a little bit gritty. Method 2 here, same consistency, and I have to admit it's a little less gritty. Now, method 3 is completely different. You see the difference in the texture? It has absorbed so much more water, making me believe that it might be a better binder. And this is the store-bought flour, which is very, very similar in consistency to the first 2 methods. So let's bake them up and see how they look and taste. I have to say that method 3 has definitely got a weird shape. The batter was much too thick. Definitely out of all of them, I would say that the one that rose the very least was the store-bought one, method 4. Okay, well, here goes nothing. This is our first test. Well, it looks very nice, very well cooked. And let's open it up. Oh, lovely. So this one had a little more rise. It looks a little undercooked there. This one too, very well, nicely cooked. I think this one even got nicely cooked on the bottom. Oh, it's perfectly cooked inside. And let's see if the taste is any different. There's number 2.
Mommy.
It is a little bit different, but not much. Number 3 seemed to be the best binder in the sense that it just really soaked things up, but let's see how it worked out. Well, it looks pretty nice. Ooh, it does look a little gummy though. Let's give it a try and see. It is definitely more gummy. It tastes really good, and it's not gritty at all, not at all, but it is definitely gummy, and it's not my favorite. I would say number 2 so far has been my favorite.
Time for number 4.
All right, number 4. Take this one. Let's have a look. This is the one with the store-bought flour. And that looks good. And let's open it up and see how it looks in the middle. Same, looks good. All right, and let's give it a try. They were all just a little bit different, to be honest. The texture, the flavor, but definitely method number 2 was our favorite by far. It had the nice fluffy texture, was crispy on the outside, just the perfect amount of soft and lightness in the middle, and it was just lovely. All in all three methods worked. They all have their benefits. So depending on what we want to use our sweet rice flour for, we could use all three. They all stood up perfectly well to the store-bought one, and in fact, they were almost better. So go ahead and grab some sweet rice and make your own sweet rice flour today. It will dramatically improve your gluten-free bakes, and you're just going to love the sweet rice flour power. For my recipes that are made with sweet rice flour, please check out the link in the description. If you have any other flours that you'd like me to show you how to make, just let me know. Starting next week, brown rice flour. See you then. And if you've listened all the way through to the end, thank you so much. And please consider subscribing and liking my video so that I can make more of these for you. Thanks and happy baking, everyone. Woo!